All right, so welcome to another broadcast from the North Carolina Masonic Research Society, and tonight we are very excited to have Brother Rene Perez from the Grand Lodge of New York. Brother Rene is a member of the Scottish Rite Valley, is the Valley of New York?
Yes.
Yep. Cryptic Council, Columbia Council number 1. He's also a member of other esoteric orders outside of Masonry as well, so he's no stranger to esoterics and a lot of the deeper mysteries, and just absolutely fantastic speaker, a fascinating gentleman. So Rene, we are very, very happy to have you, and if you're ready, it's all yours.
Thank you, Matt. All right, so I'm going to see if I can share my screen here. I'm going to take my video off so it could be a little faster. And I will share my screen. There it goes. All right. Can you see my screen? Can anyone see my screen?
I can. Looks good.
All right, great. Let me just minimize this real quick and go here. Okay. Oh, sorry. There it goes. All right. So the title is called The Secret Destiny and Prophecy of America. I know that title looks familiar and sounds familiar to certain people. I did get it from Manly P. Hall's book, but one exception, it doesn't have the word prophecy in it. But the reason I took that name is because I wanted to talk about how the philosophers and the ancients, and especially the Egyptians, they talked about how the golden age and the return of Saturn, which Saturn does rule the golden age. And the great philosophers, people like Microbius, if you ever read Microbius' book called Saturnalia, the great poets is Hesiod, Virgil, all those guys, they talked about the return of Saturn and the golden age, which rules the golden age, which everyone knows this Age of Aquarius, right? And was interesting, if you're an astrologer, you know that Saturn rules Aquarius and Uranus. And speaking of Virgil, notice the symbol here called Novus Ordo Seclorum, which to some conspiracy theorists, of course, it does mean the New World Order, right? But it actually means the new age of man. It's this a new shift of consciousness, where who is the man? Aquarius, right? He is the man that's holding the pitcher, jug, or you want to call it the grail, right? So this new age of man, we are shifting into slowly, right? So let's get started. Let's go here, the next slide real quick. So Manly P. Hall, in his book, The Secret Destiny and The Secret Destiny of America, he says this. It says, the ancients believed the earth to be surrounded by the sphere of the constellations, and they assigned to each country the star groups which were above the country's particular area of land. In the arrangement preserved in the writings of Aratus of Sully, the constellation of the eagle spreads its wings across the North American continent. The serpent wing winds its coil over Mexico and Central America, and the dragon floats in the sky above Japan and China. Perhaps Sir Edward Landseer was not far wrong when he declared that the symbols of nations and the emblems peculiar to the Haradri originated in their ruling constellations. So what he's practically saying is that in the United States of America, in this country, we are lying under a constellation of the eagle that spreads its wings. The eagle is also the sign of Scorpio, which is Aguila, right? And if you look in China, Japan, they have the dragon because they're under the constellation of Draco. And I found it very interesting that the ancients knew this, right? And there are some people who debate that in the Bible, because everyone knows that in the Bible, the astrology was supposedly never mentioned, right? Back then, you were considered a heretic. But in the Bible, it talks about that. It talks about astrology, and it talks about the Age of Aquarius. which I would get to. So, let me go back. Okay, everyone know who this guy is, Francis Bacon. According to some traditions, I would say traditions, there is a speculation that Francis Bacon was Shakespeare, right? And he had some ties to he was an period of Rosicrucian order. He had some influence in Masonry. Speculations and there's theories. Interesting enough, Bacon's last name by gematria equals 33. If you know what gematria is, 33 is very important in Masonry. And he wrote a book called The New Atlantis, which apparently had very cryptic, esoteric, a novel, a story about a secret society coming to a land, which they thought that they believed that would be this new Atlantis, and this new land would be the United States of America, which would hold this new Atlantis. And he says this, and it has Freemasonic references in it. You know, if you ever read the book, The New Atlantis. And this is what he says. I won't read the whole thing. I'll read half of it. They reigned in this island about 1900 years ago, a king whose memory of all others we must adore, not superstitiously, but as divine instrument. Though a mortal man, his name was Solomona, and we esteem him as the lawgiver of our nation. This king had a large heart, inscrutable for good, and was wholly bent to make his kingdom and people happy. Amongst the excellent acts of that king, one above all hath the preeminence. It was the erection and institution of an order or society which we call Solomon's house, the noblest foundation, as we think, that ever was upon the earth. So I won't read it that, but you can see he's referencing Solomon, right? Which is a very interesting figure in Freemasonry, right? So one interesting thing, I remember a presentation that was done refractive light by a brother. He did what a wonderful presentation. He was talking about Cleopatra's needle, and what's interesting about that pillar, which is in Central Park here, not far from me, I've seen it many times. According to some traditions, of course, that pillar was from Tutmosis III. Now, if you know that Tutmosis III was the founder, apparently, of the mystery schools. And in Egypt, the mystery schools were called Per-Ankh, which means house of life. It's beautiful, kind of, if you think about it, right? And there were two pillars. One is in Paris and one here in Central Park. And his cartouche is there, and it's called, I see it all the time when I'm there, and it's the cartouche is Mem Kephara, right? And which is the cartouche for Tutmosis III. Tutmosis III was the great-great-grandfather of Akhenaten. And apparently this pillar was a gift, apparently because it was a symbol, a stamp, you could say, for this new Atlantis, or this new age that we're heading to, of America, United States of America. Virgil, a poet, writes about the Golden Age and the return of Saturn. And he says, now has come the last age of Kumian song, the great line of the centuries begins anew. Now the Virgin returns, the reign of Saturn returns. Now a new generation descends from heaven on high, whom the iron brood shall at least cease, and the golden rays spring up throughout the world, and your own Apollo now is king, and your consulship, Polio, yes, yours, shall this glorious age begin. And you can see the iron brood is the iron age, which he says the iron brood shall at least cease, and the golden rays spring up throughout the world. And Polio, Apollo is the sun, so he's saying Apollo is the king now, when in this golden age. But Saturn is returning as well. Hesiod, another great poet, says, the golden age is the only age that falls within the rule of Chronos. Chronos is the Greek word for Saturn. created by the immortals who live on Olympus. These humans were said to live among the gods and freely mingle with them. Peace and harmony prevailed during this age. Humans did not have to work to feed themselves, for the earth provided food in abundance. They lived to a very old age, but with a youthful appearance, and eventually died peacefully. Their spirits live on as guardians. You know, it's interesting because the goal of alchemists, right, of alchemists is to have a youthful appearance but have an old age, right? And you can see there's some kind of an alchemical relation there. So the planetary rulers of Aquarius is Uranus and Saturn, right? And what's interesting now to my tarot people, you know, whoever created the tarot system knew that Uranus and Saturn Saturn was returning. And because the first card, the Fool, is the ruler of Uranus, which is the first card, or Alpha. Give me 1 second. I'm just gonna put my headphones is kind of dying, so I'm trying to like charge it here. Okay, here it goes. Okay, so the last card, which is the 21st card, is is Saturn, the world, which is, you could say, the first and the last card, the Alpha and Omega. And what is interesting is that the world card, you can see these four faces, right? And these are called the cherubims. And these four gods, or these four faces here, is very important in the new age that we're heading to. It was mentioned in the Bible, and these four faces correspond to Jehovah, with Yod, He, Vo, and He, the four vowels. Remember, the Hebrews didn't speak with vowels. And I will get to that point a little deeper in the few extra slides here. Now, remember what I said. They say that, you know, in the Bible, it talks about the age of Aquarius, right? And this is from Jesus in Luke 22:10. Behold, when you have gone into the city, a man carrying an earthy jug or pitcher of water will meet you. Follow him into the house which he enters. You can see he's saying the house, right? And this is Aquarius. What's interesting, you know, according to esoteric astrologists, John the Baptist is Aquarius, right? You know, Aquarius starts from January to February. You can say January, which everybody knows is from Janus, but you can see you can say January, you know. And as far as my Latin goes, you know, I'm not a good Latin speaker, but I know February means purification, right? Which falls into Aquarius. So in Job, talks in the Bible, which is in Job 38 here, he mentions astrology or constellations here, right? And it says here, canst thou bind the sweet influence of Pleiades, or lose the bands of Orion? Canst thou bring forth Mazzaroth, which means constellations, and his seasons, or canst thou guide Arcturus with his sons? You know, so the Bible does mention a science here, right? So, and look at the book of Ezekiel. In the book of Ezekiel, you can look at the world card. You can see the world card. You see the four faces of these four cherubims. Right? In the book of Ezekiel, he says, each of the four cherubim had four faces. The face was the face of an ox, the bull. The second was a human face, Aquarius. The third was the face of a lion. And the fourth was the face of an eagle, which is Scorpio. So he mentions it here. Right? And why these signs? Because these signs are the fixed signs in the zodiacs. It's fixed. Okay, and apparently the equinox would be Scorpio and Taurus. The solstices would be, I believe, Leo and Aquarius when this shift comes. I could be mistaken there, but now that gets interesting now. Okay, now I get this information from Paul Foster Case's book called The Great Seal. Very great book. I think everyone will love this book. And very esoteric. This book talks about how about the birth chart of the United States. Oh, I won't say the birth chart, but the chart when the day that it was signed on July 4, 1776. It was apparently signed 2 in the afternoon. Now I did this myself. Okay. So this is it. And you can see that the sun is in Cancer, right? But what's very interesting here is that the ascendant is in Scorpio, the eagle. The descendant is the opposite, the bull. And you can see if you pay attention to these black triangles here, these are right there, it's creating like a cross, right? And then the midheaven is in Leo, the lion, and the opposite of lion is Leo, of Aquarius. And why Cancer? Why they chose this month of Cancer? That's really interesting, right? Well, originally the crab was, to the Egyptian, it was the scarab. It was the beetle or kefir or the dung beetle, right? And this, it's interesting because one of the great church fathers of named Saint Augustine, he actually calls Jesus the Scarabæus. And he actually mentions it. He says, my own good beetle, and not so much because he is only begotten God, but not because he, the author of himself, has taken on the form of mortals, but because he has rolled himself into our filth and chooses to be born from his filth itself, like the dung beetle. Well, the dung beetle is a hermaphrodite, like Hermes. The word Hermes comes from hermaphrodite. And what they do, they actually lay their larvae in this piece of dung, and apparently they put it in a kind of a pond, and the larvae are born from there in this water, or you could say like a virgin birth, right? And this is the interesting thing here. Now I'm going to go into gematria here, and this is now what I'm saying is that whoever chose to sign this document at this time, date, and year, kind of these people knew about the science. They had to know this because it's either maybe probably coincidence or synchronization, or maybe there's something that's in higher power that's just in control of this. But if you really look at where the ascendant is, the eagle, and look at the lion, it's in 13th degrees in Scorpio, and it's in 21 degrees in Leo. Okay. Now, well, let's use a little bit of gematria. 13 times 21 is 273. Why is that interesting? Because in Hebrew, the 273 has the value of Harim Abif, which is very important in Masonry. It is equivalent to the Hebrew word Eben Masu Ha Bonyan. The translation is the stone the builders rejected. Now, that's just very interesting, right? Because it's I don't know. I mean, maybe they signed it for that reason, right? Maybe that has to do that the United States is the new Atlantis, and they wanted to sign it at that day and time, right? And another thing is, if you look at 13 degrees in Scorpio and you see that it's in 13 degrees, also the descendant is in Taurus, 13 plus 13 is 26. Why that number is important? Because 26 is the number in Hebrew, Yod, He, Vo, He, or these 4 astrological signs, Yod, He, Vo, and He. And these signs are the elements: water, earth, air, and fire, right? Water is Scorpio, air is, Aquarius, earth is Taurus, and fire is Leo. Now, this is another interesting thing about Yod He Vo He, which has the value of 26. Now, if we add up the zodiac signs and the position of in that circle there, and you add up in order, like Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, right? Now let's add the 4 fixed signs. Taurus is the second sign in the zodiac. Leo is the 5th sign. Scorpio is the 8th sign, and Aquarius is the 11th sign. If you add those numbers up, that actually equals 26, right? It's very interesting. And another thing that I found, maybe it's just a coincidence, but like 1776 here, you know, in Greek gematria, Jesus Christ, his number is 888. And you know, y'all know if anyone ever heard of the New Jerusalem, right? Apparently, this New Jerusalem is interesting because in Bacon and the New Atlantis, he mentions a word called Bessalem, which means house, or he calls it child of peace, but Beth means house, is the house of peace. So this New Jerusalem is not in the physical realm, but more of a cosmic realm or spiritual realm, right? This new age, this energy shift, right? And 888, which is the number for Christ, if you put 888 plus 888, is 1776, right? Interesting, right? And 1776 in Greek gematria means salvation of Israel. So you can see there's some interesting things here. Next slide. Now, this guy is Thomas J. Bergon. He wrote a book called The Light of Egypt. A very, very occult book. I mean, this book is, he wrote 2 volumes, volume 1 and 2. I think volume 1 is the hardest. I had to read that like 5 times. It's extremely hard. And he says this about this new age, this new energy shift, the age of Aquarius is going to raise consciousness. And you can see that now with people. You can see that people are trying to know. People want to know, right? And the motto of Aquarius is, I know, right? And he says, man's whole nature is being tuned to a higher key. We must not forget that these cycles apply to the race and their effect, and to the individual only as an integral part of the masculine influence. It will consequently manifest its chief activities upon the masculine qualities of the human soul. And today we have evidence of this, and this gradual enfranchisement of women, arousing the positive attributes of her nature and demanding equal rights with her brother, man. And the political arena, as she has already done in the educational field. And you can see this now, right? You can see that, you know, the women are trying to fight the equality, right? And you can see people are doing that now. This is consciousness as right, an energy shift. Oh, but the golden age is going to be very spiritual. It's going to be all good and dandy. But during a shift, you're going to have that friction. Doesn't matter. I mean, even in the golden age and this age of enlightenment, you're going to have some burdens. You're going to have that what the Yugas call it. I mean, the Yugas, the Hindus, they call it the Kali Yuga, right? The age of materialism, right? The dark age. You're going to have that age still there, that bad energy, you know. And now we're going to Setra Yuga, according to the Hindus. What's interesting, what the Hindus call it the age of electricity. Setra Yuga, which is Setra Yuga, and according to Thomas J. Bergon, he says Aquarius is an energy, is an electrical sign. He also says the water sign Pisces, through which the sun manifests through during the past 2,160 years, gave up to man their secret powers and hidden attributes and steam as a motive power, which man has completely mastered. He would likewise master the airy forces there in the present subcycle of the sun in Aquarius. Already we see him using liquid air and compressed air as a motive power, which will gradually take the place of steam as the sun gets farther into the sign constellation of Aquarius. Men will become immensely wiser than they have been, and it's to be hoped that they will leave the written record of their achievements in science and art to show to future races their status of mind on every subject, for the edification and enlightenment of coming races. You know, it's interesting, you know, if you study the possession of the equinox, I mean, possession of, not the equinox, yeah, possession of the equinox, the sun goes to each sign 2,160 years. So 2,160 years, it was an age of Pisces, right? The age of Christ, right? The fish. That's why the Christianity used the fish, right? It's interesting. The Pope is actually called a fisherman, right? And now we're heading to the age of Aquarius, right? And to the Yugas, it's a very different. Their number is different. They have a different year, and this is called the that's possession equinox. And then the sun goes to, when it finishes going to all the 12 signs, it completes it, and it's called the Great Year, which is 25,000 or something like that. Now, I forgot to mention that, you know, about the Cancer, the crab. It's a water sign, right? Now, the Egyptian, the astrological, the Dendera calendar, apparently it's, if you look at it and you pay attention, apparently, according to some Egyptologists, the astrology started in the age of Cancer in the Dendera calendar. And why is that very interesting? Now, if you want to use the precession of the equinox, right? 2,160 years I was explaining, and you go reverse, and you go all the way back to the age of Cancer, that will be probably 12,000 years ago, right? And what is interesting about that is, according to Plato, and he had an ancestor named Solon who lived 200 years prior to him, apparently. And the story goes that Solon goes to Egypt, right? He encounters a priest, and this priest tells him, you Greeks are like children. You know, you guys don't know that you are the descendants, a minuscule of people who once lived here, but you don't know because they didn't leave behind any evidence or any writing. But if you go into this island called Sais, you see two pillars with an ancient writing. There was a civilization that once lived here 9,000 years ago. Now, if you look up 9,000 years ago to now, that would be what, 12,000 years, right? Which apparently was the time that Atlantis have sunk. Now, there is a book called The Catastrophe, if I'm mistaken. I forgot the name of the book, but a lady, she talks about that scientists actually, that they believe that there was a cataclysm that happened 12,000 years, a big, huge cataclysm, right? That actually happened. And which is basically goes by the same timeline. So this science has, you know, astrology, all of these things has been perverted, right? It's a very beautiful science. It's a language, right? That's what it is. It's a language. And if you know how to speak it, you get it. And people have perverted it for centuries, right? They used it for different reasons. This science, just like tarot, was never used for divination. It's the science of the soul, right? And now that we go into this energy shift, people are starting to be more going to spirituality, and you will see this shift occurring. May not now. Yes, we have circumstances, you know, that all this events that's happening, but there is a shift. And before we see the light, you have to see the darkness, right? And you know, this shift is going to be very powerful, you know, and hopefully this it would happen soon. And I like this quote by King Solomon, and he says this. He says, "Science without conscience is but the ruin of the soul." All right, I'll end the presentation here, and I'll go for questions. And thank you. Stop sharing.
That was good.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
That was fantastic. Does anyone have any questions for Brother Rene? And if you're watching over on Facebook, if you have any questions, just type it into the comments, and I'll be happy to read them for you.
I'm taking it all in.
There's a lot to it, but I especially like that you brought in, you know, of course, Plato and Solon.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, just like you said, if you do the math, at the time of Solon would have been about 12,500 BC.
Exactly.
12,800 BC, which is right at the very end of the last ice age. And you had the Younger Dryas period where you had this rapid melting, and the sea levels were actually 400 feet lower then than they are now. And within a very, very short period of time, sea levels just, you know, exploded. So if you're an ancient man and you're living in a coastal fishing oriented, society, and the water is encroaching on your land and you're having to flee either inward or jump on your boat and go somewhere else to dry land, the perspective may not be that the water is rising. It may be that the land is actually sinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, it's interesting that it is said that, Plato was under oath when he got that story, that he didn't really explain more of the story of Atlantis. It's a possibility that that story was just an allegory. It's a possibility, right? We don't really know, right? Because if you really pay attention to the story where he's talking about Solon, and you can see that he, in the story, he says, the priest tells him, yeah, if you go to this island named Saish, you see these two pillars. And and Solon, can Solon be Solomon? These two pillars, can these two pillars be the pillars of Solomon's temple? I mean, it's possible, right? But it's just, really don't know.
And they have said that there's no evidence in Egypt that there was ever a story of a place called Atlantis. Well, in a temple at Edfu, Egypt, there is the story of how the Egyptians made their way to where they are now, and it talks about a great flood and them escaping. It doesn't say Atlantis, but I think Atlantis might be a term that Plato came up with, like Atl, the ATL.
Mayan word.
Yes, but it's funny that it's recognized on both sides of the Atlantic. There's no way that Plato would have known about that on his side, but yet it's on both sides. And
exactly.
It means water. That's way too much to be a coincidence there.
Exactly. Yeah.
There had to be some ancient connection that we've just, like Graham Hancock says, we're a species with amnesia. And,
I like that. I like that term.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We don't know, but I think it's very arrogant for us to assume that ancient man, was nothing more than hunter-gatherers, or that they had no connection with each other. Clearly, there was something going on there. So let's see. Jose has his hand raised. Jose, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, please go right ahead.
Good evening, brethren. I am here in Falls Church, Virginia. Thank you very much. Awesome presentation, Brother Rene. I have a question for you. I don't clearly understand, since you seem to know some or a lot. I want to say a lot about this kind of stuff. We refer of our time about the Christian time. Our time is the 2020. But sometimes when you read texts, they talk about I've read it in Spanish, la era vulgar, the vulgar era. And what is the reference time? If you could a little bit explain to us or to me about that. What's the reference? Where do they think they start counting the years? Because I know about the Christian era, and 0 year will be Christians' date of birth, and so on. And before that is the years go negatively counted. I know I just figured that you understand what I'm trying to talk about. And if you could tell me something about it. Thank you very much, brother.
No, that's a great question. So, of course, that we're using the Christian year, we really don't know, to be honest with you, right? I mean, it could be 3,000, it could be 4,000, right? I think the Chinese have a different year, it's different than us. We have the 2000 because we're referencing the age of the Piscean age, you know what I mean? So we really don't, but time is irrelevant, right? Because, that's a great question, but I really don't know, to be honest with you, because it's something that I don't think even science, some scholars don't even know, what year we're in.
Thanks.
Parth.
I know Parth has a bunch of questions.
Yeah. We'll say Parth to the end because he'll go all night. Let's see. Does anyone else have any questions?
I do. Brother Rene, fantastic presentation. I guess the question might seem a little bit odd, but I'll explain why. Where did you start with this? Because you crossed so many different points. So was it like, did you have a specific point that you started with and then you went and did your research, or was it just a whole bunch of different things that popped up at different times and then you start to make the connection? Like, was it linear or was it more like clustered?
I would say clustered because, I found a lot of interesting links, right? I was like, when I was reading Microbius, because there's a book called The Lost Star. You ever read that book before by George? You ever heard of him? I think his name is Walter. Anyway, I forgot his name, but in that book, he talks about the Yugas, and I was very interested in the Yugas and Atlantis, you know, so that's when I got into the deeper about the golden age. What are they talking about? What is this golden age? Why there's a meaning to it? What does this mean, you know, to the humanity, you know? And by reading like Microbius, the Saturnalia, by reading Hesiod and all those guys that were back at that time, at the time of the golden age, it kind of just made sense. And then from reading Paul Foster Case's book, The Great Seal of America, and he talks about the chart of the timing of the July 4th, 1776, and how the sun is in Cancer and the Scorpios and the Eagles in 13th degrees. I made that connection right there, and I was just like, "Whoa, this is and the Age of Aquarius, which is the ruler of Saturn." You know, because I've been studying astrology for a long time, and so that's how. So it was just basically just clustered in. I'll tell you something very interesting. Apparently, in Philly, the Liberty Bell, I believe at 2 p.m., it's hit 13 times. You know, so yeah, it's, you know, it's very interesting, but yeah, it's just everything was just clustered in, and you know,
That's kind of interesting. So 13 degrees, 13.
Yeah.
13 original colonies.
Exactly.
Declaration was signed.
Friday
Exactly.
the 13th.
Friday the 13th. Yeah, you know, but yeah, it's those links was just, you know, I was just like so mind boggled. I was just like, wow, this is it a coincidence? You know, or what Paul Case says, maybe there's something in a higher, you know, something in the higher realm that's in charge of this. I don't know, maybe synchronization, you know.
As above, so below.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's all right.
Much.
I'm sorry, Brent, your sound went out a little bit there.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
I can see where you get the connections, because you know a lot of astrology is what really is sacred, because without astrology people would get lost. They would not know when to pick their food, when to, you know, it's a sacred to humanity. So they you know they recorded it in different ways, but it's all the same.
Yeah, you know,
I think in each civilization, you know, they interpret it in a different way, but it's all comes to the same thing. And
exactly.
it's a sacredness that humanity has passed on, and it keeps on passing on, because without it, we have to keep on respecting that, you know, because it's brought us here where we're at now.
Yeah, I mean, if you really look at the word astrology, right? Astro is light or star, and logi is the study of or logos, right? The light, logos, you know. So you know, astrology has been kind of perverted over the years, and that science is people has been, you know, kind of misused and abused, and that's why it's been so poo-pooed all this long, you know.
Brother, good evening. Coming in from New York. I just had it wasn't a part of your presentation, but it's obvious to me that you have a great insight. And with that said, I wanted to see if you, through your research, have uncovered any astrological connection with the Baphomet image.
Sure. Baphomet. So Baphomet is Capricorn, right? You know, Baphomet. And you know, there's a lot of things with Baphomet. If you look at the symbol of Baphomet, right? I go in a little esoteric a little bit here. But if you look at the symbol of Baphomet in certain tarot cards, you notice that in the bottom of Baphomet, there is like a red cross, and then his eyes is red, right? Well, Baphomet is a symbol of, is an androgynous being, because the breast is man, one is, the other side is female, and one side is male. It's the androgynous man, right? It's that Sophia, what the Gnostics call the Sophia and the Savior. It's hermaphrodite, right? But notice that the cross is red and the eyes is red. It represents that the head, the reason the eye is red, because Aries rules the head. So the ruler of Aries is Mars. And the reason that in the bottom area, the cross, you see a little cross there, is red, because the ruler is Scorpio. So the ruler of Scorpio is Mars. And notice that where the cross is where the sexual organ is, right? And the ruler, esoteric astrology, you notice that the ruler of the genitals is Scorpio, and the ruler of the head is Aries. And the Latin word for the head is ment, right? And the Latin word for testicles is testes. But if you put them together, you have something called the testament, right? But what's very interesting, notice that in the Hindu, right, you have something called the chakras, which comes from the Aries all the way from Scorpio to the sexual organs. But from Sagittarius and down, there's no organs, right? So it's very.
What's that word? Chakras?
Chakras, yeah,
Okay.
right, yeah. And notice that that's where the Kundalini falls from Scorpio to Aries. You know, it's from that sacred center. It's that middle pillar, right? It's where where the enlightenment is. So, you know, Baphomet. The word Baphomet is just a cipher. Apparently, you know, it's a cipher for Sophia. The Sophia is the wisdom. It's what the Christian Rosencrux talks about, that alchemical marriage from within.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that Baphomet symbol is it's a lot of it. You know, but it's the, you know, if you know about you know, Capricorn, the word cabri means goat in Spanish, right?
Mm.
And the word horn comes from corn, which means the seed. And notice that little esoteric meaning there. You know.
There's obviously a lot packed into this.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah.
Beyond what meets the eye.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all connected to astrology. It's just everything goes back to astrology.
Yeah.
Thank you, brother, for that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and you know, there was a time where astrology and astronomy were one and the same. Now we've kind of broken them up into two different things. Where astronomy is, you know, considered to be mainstream, and then astrology is considered to be kind of a woo-woo science, or some kind of paranormal thing that science really doesn't want to address.
Yeah, it's been kind of, like I said, it's been perverted. You know, I remember reading, I forgot who it was, but one of them, I forgot who I got this from, but there was. That the Egyptians didn't like to teach the Greeks sometimes because they get their heads swelled up so easily. You know what I mean? They go back and they think they know everything now, right? And because a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, right? And there is the true science is there, right? But some of it was actually hidden, right? It was hidden because it had to be secret, right? And you know, there's this guy, I keep forgetting his name, but this anagram, I use this analogy. This analogy actually always resonates with me. Somebody wrote him a letter, and they asked him, "Why do you guys keep secrets? You know, why? Why do you keep secrets? You know?" And he replied back, and he says, "Look, I'm reading a science book right now that will answer your question." And he says, and the journal says that if monkey was to learn how to light matches, we wouldn't have any more forests. You know. So you have to be careful with it sometimes, because you get people like, you know.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Rene, that was absolutely phenomenal. Great presentation.
Thank you.
We'd love to have you back sometime. That was.
Thank you. I mean, I shortened it. You know, it was more for it, but I didn't want to go into it. You know, I try to keep it maybe like 15% esoteric or something like that. Not too much. I lose people that way. I just want to go into a little bit other things. But yeah, I made it a little short. It was actually originally was longer. You know, I presented it in my lodge. Yeah.
Well, it was fantastic. It really was.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, I'll close it out. But Rene, thank you again. Everyone, thank you for attending. It was all great seeing you again. And join us. Actually, Thursday this week, we have Mitch Horowitz joining us. That will not be live streamed to Refracted Light, but the registration link is on Refracted Light under events. So if you'd like to hear Mitch Horowitz talk about the Hermeticism, actually the name of this presentation is Hermes Resurrected. But going through Hermeticism, and it's impact on us today. So that should be absolutely fantastic. Really looking forward to that. So thank you everybody for joining us, and we will see you next week.